Captain Eli Holt sat alone in the cockpit of the daring Star, his hands gripping the worn edges of the ship's control panel. The star streaks outside the small porthole stretched and blurred as the ship drifted aimlessly through the void of space. The once grand vessel was a relic now, a symbol of a past age. The ship had been designed for grand explorations, its corridors once bustling with the chatter of a full crew. Now there was only silence. Eli was the last of them, the last to hold the ship's memories, its hopes, its failures. The daring Star had seen better days. The hull, once sleek and shiny, was now scratched, covered in rust from years of neglect. Eli had scavenged parts from nearby derelict ships, piecing them together to keep his journey alive. His last mission had gone south, and the aftermath left him stranded, isolated, alone in the deepest parts of space. But loneliness was something Eli had grown accustomed to. It had become a companion over the years, one that never spoke, but always lingered. He didn't mind. Sometimes being alone meant he could hear the stars better, feel the vibrations of space, as if they were singing their own quiet song. There was a moment, though, when even silence became too much. That's when the radio buzzed to life. The broken radio, tucked into a corner of the cockpit, had only sparked up twice in the last few months, its signal faint and distorted. Eli had almost given up on it entirely. The radio had become a cruel reminder of his isolation, a symbol of things that once were and now barely existed. But now, it was different. The first words crackled through, so faint that Eli wasn't sure he had heard them at all. His hand moved instinctively, adjusting the frequency dial. The static hummed louder, vibrating through the ship's walls, but there was something else too. A whisper, a voice. "I know you're out there, human." Eli froze. He had heard the words, clear as day. His heart skipped a beat, and his breath caught in his throat. The signal was weak, barely audible, but the message was undeniable. Someone, or something, was trying to reach him. The voice felt strangely familiar, though he couldn't place it. And it was calling him by name. Captain Eli Holt! His mind raced. Was this some kind of trap? Another galactic scavenger trying to lure him in for some dark purpose? His instincts told him to be cautious, but his curiosity, something that had served him well over the years, won out. He fiddled with the controls, trying to increase the signal. The ship's computer whirred and beeped, trying to process the faint transmission, but it kept fading in and out. The static was unbearable, yet the voice still echoed through the broken radio. "I've been waiting for you," the voice whispered, softer now, as if the speaker knew he was listening. "Only you can help me. Only you can save us." Eli's fingers moved over the buttons like they had a mind of their own. He knew he should ignore it. He knew it was probably some strange cosmic anomaly, just a glitch in the system. Or maybe even a cruel joke. But deep down, he felt something stir. A sense of urgency. A sense of importance. He had been traveling for years, feeling disconnected from the rest of the galaxy. Now, suddenly, a voice called out to him. Was this a chance for redemption? Or had he been tricked into something far darker? He didn't know, but he had to find out. He leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Who is this?" he asked into the radio, his voice breaking the silence of the ship for the first time in what felt like forever. There was a long pause, and for a moment, Eli thought he had imagined the whole thing. The radio crackled, and then, like a light flickering on in the darkness, the voice returned, clearer this time. "I am Queen Xeris," it said, a word soft and melodic. "I come from a distant world, from a place beyond your knowledge. But I know of you, human. I know of your kind strength, your will to survive against impossible odds." Eli felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't sure if it was the words, the strange feeling that now filled the cockpit, or the fact that the voice seemed to resonate in his very bones. Queen Xeris, an alien queen, speaking directly to him. "What do you want from me?" Eli asked, his voice steady but edged with suspicion. "Why me?" There was a slight pause before the queen responded. "I have been trapped for centuries. My people are lost. Our empire crumbled to nothing long ago, but your people, are different. You are survivors. You are resilient." The transmission broke, and for a moment Eli feared it would end entirely. But then the signal came back, stronger, the voice filling the space around him. It was as if Queen Xeris was there, standing just beyond the reach of his senses. "Please, Captain," she continued, her voice filled with an intensity that sent shivers through Eli's body. "You must come. I need your help. I can offer you nothing but my word, but I swear your journey will not be in vain." Eli sat back in his seat, staring at the radio. This was insane. Everything in him told him to turn the ship around, to escape and leave the signal behind. But something about her words, the urgency in her voice, kept him tethered to that moment. He had spent so many years alone, drifting in the void, and now this queen, this alien voice was asking for his help. Could he ignore it? It felt wrong to turn away, but was it too good to be true? Could he risk everything on a broken signal? "I'll come," Eli said finally, the words slipping from his lips before he could think better of it. "Where are you?" The queen's voice softened, as if she had expected the answer. "Follow the signal. It will guide you. But be warned, human. The path is fraught with danger. I will not lie to you. My enemies are close, and if they find you, they will not stop until they have destroyed you." Eli clenched his fists. Danger was something he had faced countless times in his career as a captain. It was nothing new. But this was different. This wasn't just another hostile force or enemy ship. This was an ancient race, a fallen empire, and a queen calling out from the shadows of time. As the signal faded, Eli knew what he had to do. There was no going back. He set the course on the star map, his hands moving with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The engines hummed to life, and the daring star slowly began to turn, heading into the unknown. The darkness of space stretched before him, filled with endless possibilities. Whatever lay ahead, Eli knew he couldn't ignore it. He had been called. And this time, the voice on the other end of the radio wasn't just a signal. It was a plea, a promise, and Eli Holt was going to answer. Captain Eli Holt piloted the daring star with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The ship's engine hummed softly, its metallic creaks echoing through the hull as the ship made its slow journey across the cold expanse of space. The stars outside were like distant beacons, indifferent and unreachable. But now, Eli had a destination, something far more important than any drifting star. He stared at the controls, his fingers hovering over the navigation panel. The signal from Queen Xeris still echoed in his mind, her voice still warm and desperate, almost as though it had become a part of him. He couldn't shake it. "Follow the signal," she had said. It had been the only thing that mattered in that moment, and now it was the only thing that mattered as he steered the daring star through the silent void. Eli's hand rested on the ship's console, and he let out a slow, steady breath. This wasn't the first time he'd been led into unknown territory. He had spent his entire life navigating the stars, charting the uncharted, exploring places that others had only dreamed of. But this was different. There was something about the Queen's message that gnawed at him. Something deep in his gut telling him that this journey wouldn't just change his course, it would change everything. As the hours passed, the familiar emptiness of space began to feel heavy. A silence pressed down on him. And though he was alone on the ship, it felt as though the entire galaxy was holding its breath. The signal had grown louder, clearer, like a beacon guiding him toward an unknown fate. Eli adjusted the controls again, trying to get a better sense of the signal's origin. His ship's old equipment wasn't made for this kind of precision. He wasn't sure exactly what he was searching for. The signal was vague, scattered across frequencies, sometimes cutting in and out, but always pulling him toward the same destination. Then, the screen before him flickered. A small dot appeared on the display. It was faint, almost imperceptible. But it was there, a tiny point of light that was not supposed to be there. The coordinates matched. He had arrived. Eli's heart quickened. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, a mix of excitement and anxiety creeping in. The unknown lay ahead, and with it, a promise of something, or someone. He couldn't fully understand, but whatever it was calling to him. The planet loomed in the distance now, its surface a mixture of rugged landscapes and scattered ruins. A deep, stormy atmosphere swirled above its surface, swirling like a cloak that shielded the planet from view. It wasn't like any world Eli had encountered before. There was something ancient about it, an aura of mystery that seemed to whisper of long-forgotten stories, of histories buried beneath the surface. The planet's surface was mostly covered in desert-like terrain, with mountains rising sharply in the distance. But there were signs of life, or at least there had been. The wreckage of structures, twisted metal and stone, scattered across the landscape like the remnants of some grand civilization. It wasn't just ruins. It was a forgotten empire, an empire that had been ravaged by time, and perhaps by something far more destructive than mere erosion. The ship descended slowly, its thrusters gently easing it down through the atmosphere. The comms remained silent, save for the occasional crackle of static. Queen Xeris's voice was no longer in his ears, but her presence still lingered in the back of his mind, urging him forward. As the daring star touched down, the ground beneath the ship gave a soft tremor. Eli's boots hit the cold metal floor as he stood up and moved toward the door. He had made it. There was no turning back now. Outside, the air was thick and heavy with the scent of dust and something else, something unfamiliar. The wind howled as it swept across the barren landscape, carrying with it the faintest echo of voices long lost. Eli could feel the weight of the planet's history bearing down on him as he stepped onto the surface. It was as though the very ground was alive with memories, though none of them were happy ones. He moved cautiously, his boots crunching over the rocky terrain as he made his way toward the heart of the ruins. The ancient city lay before him, or what was left of it. Towering stone structures were half collapsed, their sharp edges worn smooth by the passage of time. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, cryptic and alien. There was a beauty to it, in a way, a haunting elegance that spoke of a civilization long gone. Eli couldn't help but wonder what had happened here, what had caused such destruction. The Queen had spoken of enemies, of a fallen empire, but she hadn't been clear on the details. What had brought this place to its knees? He pressed on, his curiosity outweighing his caution. The air grew heavier as he moved deeper into the ruins, and the walls seemed to close in around him. It was as though the very earth was holding its breath, waiting for him to uncover the secrets it had hidden for so long. Eventually, he came upon what appeared to be a central structure, the largest of the remaining buildings. It was an ancient temple, its grand arches still standing tall despite the decay around them. As he approached, the signal from the Queen grew stronger, clearer. It was as though the structure itself was drawing him in. Inside, the air was cool and still. The walls were lined with carvings, their meanings lost to time, but Eli could feel the weight of the history in them. This had once been a place of power, a place of worship. Now, it was a tomb. At the center of the room, a pedestal stood. Upon it rested an object, glowing faintly with a strange, otherworldly light. Eli stepped forward, his hand reaching out instinctively, though a part of him screamed to stop. But his curiosity had always been his guide, and now it led him to this very moment. His fingers brushed against the surface of the object, and in that instant the entire room seemed to shift. The air grew dense, the temperature dropping sharply. Eli's breath became visible, his heart pounding in his chest as a soft hum filled the space. It wasn't just a sound, it was a presence, a force that reached into him, into his very soul. Then, a voice rang out in his mind, clear, as though it were right beside him. Human. The voice of Queen Xeris. Eli stumbled back, his pulse racing. The voice was no longer coming through the radio. It was inside his head, and it was so real, so powerful, that he could feel her presence in the very depths of his being. "I am here," the Queen's voice whispered, filled with urgency. "You have found it. The key." Eli's eyes scanned the room frantically, but there was no one there. The walls stood silent, unmoving, yet he felt her all around him. It was as if the entire place was alive, resonating with her words. "The key?" Eli repeated, his voice trembling. "What do you mean?"
"There is much you do not understand, human," she replied.
"But you will. I need you to take it. You must carry it with you if you are to save us all." Eli's gaze fell on the pedestal once more, and he saw it then. The crown. It was the source of the glow, an intricate alien design that seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't explain. He reached out again, but this time, the Queen's voice cautioned him. "Be careful, Eli. The crown is not what it seems. It is both a blessing and a curse." He hesitated, but only for a moment. What choice did he have? He had come this far, and now there was no turning back. With one last deep breath, Eli reached forward and grasped the crown. In that instant, the world around him exploded into a kaleidoscope of color and light. The room seemed to stretch, and the very air was filled with the Queen's voice, now louder than ever, commanding, pleading, desperate.
"You must help me, human,"
she cried. "Help me restore my people, restore my empire. Only you can do it. Only you can break the chains that bind me." Eli gritted his teeth, his hand tightening around the crown. He could feel its power surging through him, coursing through his veins. It was overwhelming, all-consuming. But there was something else, something darker lurking within it. As the room returned to its eerie stillness, Eli knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The true challenge had only just begun, and there was no way of knowing how far this would take him or what price he would have to pay. But there was no turning back now. Eli's heart raced as he stood there, the weight of the crown in his hand. It wasn't just a piece of metal or ornament. It pulsed with an energy he couldn't fully understand. It felt alive, as if the ancient artifact itself was calling to him, demanding his attention. His fingers trembled as he held it, unsure of what to do next. The Queen's voice still echoed in his mind, her words sharp and clear. "Human," she had said, "you have found it. The key." The room around him seemed to close in, the walls pressing against him. He could feel the energy of the crown vibrating in his bones. He wanted to let go, to step back. But something inside him, something deep, told him to hold on, to keep going. The Queen had trusted him with this, whatever this was, and he wasn't going to back down now. Eli took a slow breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. His fingers tightened around the crown as he shifted his weight, preparing himself for whatever came next. The air in the temple felt heavy, thick with centuries of secrets. His mind wandered back to the Queen's message. She had spoken of enemies, of a race that had destroyed her people and scattered her empire to the far reaches of the galaxy. But she had also spoken of hope, the possibility of a rebirth, of a chance to restore what had been lost. But Eli didn't understand. He didn't know how a broken crown or the alien queen's plea for help could change anything. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't some ancient warrior destined to save the galaxy. He was just a captain of a ship, an explorer who had gotten lost in space. Yet here he was, standing in the ruins of a fallen empire, holding a crown that could hold the key to something greater than he could ever have imagined. A cold breeze swept through the temple, sending a shiver down his spine. The faintest flicker of movement caught his eye. At the far end of the room, hidden in the shadows, something stirred. Eli's breath caught in his throat as he squinted into the darkness. He hadn't heard anything, but now it was impossible to ignore. The feeling of being watched, being hunted, was growing stronger. He wasn't alone. His instincts kicked in. He pulled the crown close to his chest as if its presence would protect him. His eyes darted around the room, scanning for any sign of danger. But the room remained still, the silence almost deafening. He was alone, but the presence, the feeling of being observed, lingered in the air. It was unnerving, like something was waiting, biding its time. The Queen's voice returned, cutting through the silence like a blade. "You are not alone, human," she said. "They are here." Eli stiffened. The words were not a warning. They were a statement of fact. He could feel it now. The shift in the atmosphere, the change in the air. The crown in his hands grew heavier, its power pulling him deeper into the unknown. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do, but the feeling in his gut told him to keep moving, to keep searching. He took a tentative step forward, his boots scraping against the cold stone floor. The temple stretched out before him, its once proud walls now crumbling and decayed. The strange symbols that adorned the walls flickered, as if they were alive, glowing faintly in the dim light. Eli's fingers brushed against them as he walked, feeling the heat of their markings. They felt like memories, distant echoes of a time long past. He paused at the edge of a massive door. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The door was enormous, made of a strange metal that shimmered in the dim light. Intricate designs were etched into its surface, the symbols too complex to decipher. It was beautiful in its alien complexity, and Eli knew that whatever lay behind it, it held the answers he was seeking. A sudden noise made him jump. A scraping sound, faint but distinct, came from the darkness beyond the door. His heart pounded in his chest as he instinctively reached for his sidearm, only to remember that he had left it on the ship. He cursed under his breath, but there was no time for regret. Whatever was out there, it was getting closer. The Queen's voice rang out once again, this time filled with urgency. "The enemies have found you. They will stop at nothing to take the crown. You must act quickly, human." Eli's mind raced. He wasn't sure what kind of enemies she was talking about, but his instincts told him to get moving. Without thinking, he shoved the crown into the pack on his back and stepped forward. The door creaked as he pushed against it, the sound grating on his nerves. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. Behind the door, a vast chamber stretched out before him. It was like a cathedral, its high arches disappearing into the darkness above. The air was thick with dust, and the faintest glimmer of light from outside filtered in through cracks in the stone. As his eyes adjusted, he could make out the shapes of large structures, machines perhaps, or artifacts of the old empire. Everything in the room seemed ancient, long forgotten, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Eli's footfalls echoed through the vast space as he moved further into the chamber. His eyes scanned the room, his senses on high alert. He could feel the tension in the air, the silent anticipation that hung over everything. Something was waiting. Then, suddenly, there was movement. Figures emerging from the shadows, their forms tall and skeletal, their faces hidden behind dark masks. They were humanoid, but their eyes glowed with a sinister light, their features alien and twisted. They moved with a fluid grace, as though they were one with the darkness. Eli's heart skipped a beat as he instinctively backed away. The figures closed in on him, their movements synchronized and deliberate. He didn't know who they were, but one thing was clear: they were not friendly. They were here for the crown, for whatever power it held. The Queen's voice filled his mind, her tone desperate. Do not let them take it. You must protect the crown at all costs. Eli's hand flew to the pack on his back, clutching the crown. It was his only hope, his only weapon. He had to keep it safe, no matter what. The figures moved closer, and the air around them seemed to grow colder, darker. They spoke in a language Eli couldn't understand, their voices hissing through the air like the whispers of ghosts. They were closing in, trapping him in the chamber. Eli's mind raced. He couldn't take them all on. He wasn't a soldier, and these creatures looked far more dangerous than anything he had ever encountered. He had to think, had to act, quickly. His only advantage was the crown. It had to be. His hand gripped the artifact tightly. He had no idea what it could do, but the Queen had promised it was powerful. Maybe it was time to test that power. With a quick motion, he pulled the crown from the pack and held it high above his head. The room seemed to tremble as the crown began to glow, a soft, eerie light emanating from its center. The figures recoiled, their eyes narrowing as the light grew brighter, more intense. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Step away, Eli said, his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. I don't want to hurt you, but I will. The figures hesitated, their movements slowing as if they were studying him. The light from the crown intensified, and Eli felt its power coursing through him, filling him with an energy he had never known. The Queen's voice filled his mind once more. You have awakened its power. Now you must use it. With a deep breath, Eli focused on the crown, on the strange energy it held. He didn't know how, but he felt a surge of control, a sense that he could direct its power. He aimed the crown toward the figures, and with a sudden burst, a wave of energy erupted from it. The figures screamed in a language Eli couldn't understand, their forms dissolving into the shadows. The chamber fell silent once more. Eli's heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, but the figures were gone. The light from the crown dimmed, and for a moment, everything seemed to settle. He had done it. He had protected the crown. But at what cost? The Queen's voice echoed in his mind again, softer now, more grateful. You have proven yourself human, she said. The crown is safe, for now. But Eli knew this was far from over. The crown was powerful, yes, but the enemies she had warned him about were still out there, still hunting him. He had only just begun to unravel the mysteries of this ancient world, and the true test was still ahead. The quiet of the chamber settled over Eli, but the tension in his chest remained. His hands still gripped the crown tightly, the artifact now pulsing softly in his palms, as if it were alive. He could feel the energy from it, like a current running through him, a strange power that had not been there before. The mysterious figures who had tried to take the crown were gone, dissolved into nothing by the force of the crown's power. But Eli knew that this was just the beginning. The enemies she had warned him about were still out there, and they would come for him again. He had no idea who these beings were, or what their intentions were, but one thing was certain. They had wanted the crown, and they would stop at nothing to get it. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come, but he couldn't turn back now. He had come too far, and there was no going back. As the adrenaline began to fade, Eli took a deep breath and let go of the crown, placing it gently back into the pack at his side. His hand lingered on it for a moment, but he quickly pulled away, as though the power it held was too much to handle for long. The silence in the temple was suffocating, but it was also strangely peaceful. It was as if the room itself was waiting for him to make the next move. Eli took a moment to compose himself. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do next. The Queen's voice had gone silent in his mind, and the temple's strange energy seemed to have faded with the departure of the mysterious figures. The queen had spoken of enemies, of a race that had destroyed her people and scattered her empire across the stars, but she had also spoken of hope, the possibility of rebirth, of restoration. Eli had no idea how the crown fit into any of it, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to keep it safe. If he didn't, everything the queen had asked him to do, everything he had come here for, would be in vain. He looked around the room once more, the eerie glow from the crown casting strange shadows on the walls. The symbols etched into the stone seemed to shift and shimmer, their meanings still beyond him. They were old, impossibly old, and Eli felt a deep sense of awe as he studied them. Whoever had lived here, whoever had created this temple, had once been part of something grand, a civilization that had stood the test of time. But now, it was all gone. Only ruins remained. Eli's thoughts turned to the queen. He had come here to help her, to restore her empire, to bring hope back to a world that had long since fallen silent. But what if he was too late? What if the enemies the queen had spoken of were already here, already poised to strike? The crown, still in his pack, felt heavier now, as though it were a constant reminder of the responsibility resting on his shoulders. But how could he restore an empire that had been lost for centuries? How could one man, one human, make a difference? The queen's voice returned, this time softer, more distant.
You have the crown, human.
But it is not enough. You must find the source. The key to the future lies within the heart of the empire. You must seek it out. The words echoed in Eli's mind, but they didn't make much sense. The heart of the empire? He had no idea where to begin. As he stood there, trying to process the queen's words, a sudden rumbling shook the temple. The walls seemed to shudder, and the ground beneath Eli's feet trembled. The crown in his pack glowed brighter for a moment, its energy surging like a warning. Eli's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just an earthquake or some natural event. This was something else. Something was coming. He turned quickly, his instincts kicking in. He grabbed the pack with the crown and made for the exit. The rumbling grew louder, and the temple's walls seemed to crack and split, as though the very foundation of the place was breaking apart. Eli didn't look back. He ran through the ruins, navigating the maze of broken stone and debris, his heart pounding in his chest. The floor beneath him cracked as he sprinted, but he didn't slow down. He couldn't. The rumbling grew louder and louder, and he could feel the pressure in the air, as if something enormous was coming his way. He reached the main chamber where the massive door he had passed through earlier loomed in front of him. It was still open, and the space beyond it was filled with darkness. He could hear the sound of rushing wind, and there, in the distance, he saw movement, a shadow against the horizon. Something was coming, something powerful, and it was heading straight for him. The crown's light flared brighter, almost blinding in its intensity. Eli felt the pull, the power of the artifact calling to him, urging him to act. But what was he supposed to do? How could he fight whatever was coming? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. He was just a man trying to survive. The shadow grew larger, moving closer, its form becoming more defined. Eli could make out the shape of something massive, an enormous creature unlike anything he had ever seen before. It had long, jagged limbs, and its eyes glowed with an eerie red light. Its body was covered in dark, scaly armor, and it moved with an unnatural grace, as though it were something out of a nightmare. Eli's breath caught in his throat as he took a step back. This was it. This was the enemy the Queen had warned him about, and it was coming for him. He had no choice now. He had to fight. The Queen's voice filled his mind again, stronger this time. You can do it, human. Use the crown. It is your weapon. Trust in it. Eli didn't hesitate. Now, he reached into his pack and pulled out the crown. The moment his fingers touched it, the energy surged through him, and he felt an overwhelming power flood his body. The crown wasn't just an artifact. It was a weapon, a source of untold strength. With a deep breath, Eli raised the crown above his head, and the light from it burst forth, blindingly bright. The creature, still moving toward him, hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing as it tried to shield itself from the light. The air around Eli vibrated with power, and he felt the crown's energy growing stronger, more intense. It wasn't just a physical force. It was something more. The very ground beneath him seemed to respond, shifting and moving as if the temple itself was alive, responding to the crown's call. The creature roared, its voice echoing through the ruins, but it was too late. The energy from the crown exploded outward, a shockwave of light and power that sent the creature stumbling back. Eli held firm, focusing all his will on the crown. The light intensified, the energy radiating outward in every direction. With a final deafening roar, the creature collapsed, its body dissolving into the darkness, leaving only a lingering shadow in its wake. Eli stood there, panting, his heart racing. He had done it. He had defeated it. But at what cost? The Queen's voice filled his mind once again, softer now, almost relieved. You are stronger than I thought, human. You have done what was once impossible. You have proven yourself worthy of the crown. Eli lowered the crown, the light from it fading slowly. He didn't know what had just happened, but he knew that the battle was far from over. The Queen had said it was not enough. There was still more to do. With the crown in hand, Eli took a step forward. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready. He had come too far to turn back now, and with the power of the crown, he knew he could face whatever else the galaxy had in store for him. The adventure had only just begun.